Have you ever stopped to wonder what everything around you is really made of? I mean, think about it. What does a solid rock, the water flowing in a river, and the very air that you're breathing right now, what do they all have in common? Well, the answer is something so small you can't even see it. So today, we're going on a little journey. We're going to start with the world we can see and touch, and we're going to dive deep, deep down into the invisible world of the building blocks that make up, well, absolutely everything. Okay, let's begin with something familiar. Picture this scene. Maybe you've been somewhere just like it. You've got these big, solid rocks that you can pick up and hold in your hand. You've got fine grains of sand that can just pour right through your fingers. And of course, you have the water, which you can't really hold at all, can you? It just flows around your hand. Now, these all look and feel completely different, but they are all what we call matter. The real question, the one we're going to explore, is why? What makes them behave in such different ways? And that really brings us to the big mystery for today. Think about it. Why can you make a pile of stones or build a sandcastle, but you can't make a pile of water? It just spreads out, right? The answer isn't on the surface. No, the answer lies deep down inside the very structure of these things, at a level that's completely invisible to our eye. So, to start cracking this mystery, we're going to do something pretty cool. We're going to start big with the world we know, and then we're going to shrink ourselves down, smaller and smaller. You see, those big rocks on the riverbank, over thousands of years, they get broken down by wind and water into smaller pebbles and then eventually into tiny grains of sand. We can actually see this same process happen with things we use every day. Let's take this simple piece of chalk, for example. We start with a whole stick. Now, we can snap it in half. What do we have? Two smaller pieces of chalk, right? It's still chalk. Now, what if we take those pieces and we grind them down, crush them into a really, really fine powder? If you could look at one of those tiny specks of dust under a microscope, you'd find it's still chalk. All we've done is change its size. We haven't changed what it fundamentally is. But here's the big question. What if we could keep going? What if we could break it down even further?
And this, my friends, is where things get really, really interesting. Because our process of breaking things down, it doesn't stop with the dust that we can see. If we had some kind of super-duper microscope and could just keep dividing that tiniest grain of chalk again and again, we would eventually get to a point where we couldn't divide it anymore and still have it be chalk. We would reach its fundamental, invisible units, the ultimate building blocks.
These ultimate building blocks, they have a name. And they are the absolute key to understanding everything, from why sugar seems to vanish in water to why a diamond is so incredibly hard. They explain it all. So let's finally put a name to these things and see what they're all about. So here's the single most important idea of this whole explainer. Everything, the chalk, the water, the air, you, me, is made up of things that scientists call constituent particles. Just think of them as the basic, incredibly tiny units that, when you clump millions and billions and trillions of them together, they make up all the stuff that we can actually see and touch and interact with in our world. Let me give you a perfect example. We've all done this. You stir a spoonful of sugar into a glass of water. You stir, and the sugar crystals, they disappear. They're gone, right? But you can still taste the sweetness, so the sugar is still there. What happened? Well, the sugar crystal simply broke down into its individual constituent particles. Those particles are so tiny we can't see them anymore, and they've spread out, fitting into the little empty spaces that exist between the particles of the water. They didn't vanish, they just mixed in on a microscopic level.
Okay, so you might be wondering, if everything is made of these separate little particles, what stops everything from just disintegrating into a cloud of dust? Why does a rock stay a rock? Well, there's a force at work. It's called interparticle attraction. The best way to think of it is like a tiny magnetic force, or a microscopic glue, that's pulling all the particles toward each other. And the strength of this glue is absolutely crucial, because it's the main reason we have solids, liquids, and gases.
So how can these two simple ideas, tiny particles and the forces between them, explain so much? Well, it's actually beautiful in its simplicity. It perfectly explains the three main states of matter that we see all around us every single day. And it all just comes down to how far apart the particles are and how strong that glue between them is.
Let's start with solids. In a solid, like a rock or a piece of metal, the particles are packed together super tightly in a neat, orderly way. And that interparticle attraction, that glue, is incredibly strong. It locks every single particle into a fixed position. Now, they're not perfectly still. They actually vibrate a little bit in their spot, but they can't move around. And this is exactly why a solid has a definite shape and a definite volume. It's rigid because its particles are locked in place.
Now what about a liquid? Well, in a liquid, the particles are still quite close together, but the attractive forces between them are weaker. They have a bit more energy, so they're not locked into fixed positions anymore. They can break free and slide and tumble past one another. This is precisely why water can flow. It's why a liquid takes the shape of whatever container you pour it into. The particles are free to move, but they're still held together enough that they don't just fly away. And finally, we get to gases. In a gas, the particles have so much energy that they've almost completely overcome those attractive forces. The glue is barely working at all. They are very, very far apart from each other, and they are just zipping and zooming around freely in all directions, bouncing off each other and the walls of their container. This is why a gas will always expand to fill any space you give it. It has no fixed shape and no fixed volume.
So this little chart here just sums it all up perfectly. Let's run through it. In a solid, the spacing between particles is at a minimum, and the attraction is at a maximum, so the particles can only vibrate in place. In a liquid, there's a little more space, the attraction is weaker, and that allows the particles to move around a bit. And finally, in a gas, you've got maximum spacing and basically zero attraction, which means the particles can move freely everywhere. See? It all connects!
Okay, so we've established that these particles exist, and their arrangement gives us solids, liquids, and gases. But I did mention that they're always moving. I know what you might be thinking. Okay, sure, but how do we know they're moving if we can't see them? That is an excellent question. And luckily, we have some really clear, visible proof that this invisible world is in constant, chaotic motion.
This experiment is one of my favorites because it's just so visual. Watch this. We take a crystal of this chemical, potassium permanganate, and we just gently drop it into a beaker of still water. We're not stirring it, not shaking it, nothing. But look, these beautiful purple-pink streaks start to spread out, all on their own. This isn't magic. What you're seeing is the constant motion of the water particles. They are bumping into the permanganate crystal, knocking its particles loose, and then carrying them all throughout the water until eventually the entire glass is a uniform pink color. That's proof.
And you experience the same thing in your everyday life. Think about the smell of an incense stick, or maybe someone is cooking something delicious in the kitchen. How does that smell get from the kitchen all the way to you in another room? Well, the tiny fragrance particles leave the food or the incense stick, and then they get bumped and carried all around the room by the constantly moving particles of the air. The air itself acts like a delivery system for the smell. That's direct proof of particle motion in gases.
All right, let's bring this all back together. Let's zoom back out. We started with a pretty simple question about why you can stack rocks, but not water. And that question took us on a journey, down into an unseen world, a world made of countless tiny moving particles that provides a beautiful, simple answer to it all.
So, if you're going to remember just a few things from our discussion today, let it be these. First, and most importantly, everything is made of unbelievably small particles that are always moving. Second, how those particles are arranged and how strongly they stick together is what determines if something is a solid, a liquid, or a gas. That's why solids are solid. Their particles are locked up. And it's why liquids and gases can flow. Their particles can move around. And finally, that empty space between particles is super important. It's what allows things like sugar to dissolve in water.
I really like this quote from the source material. It just says it all so perfectly. The tiny units obtained are the basic building blocks that the chalk was made up of. It's just like how a huge building is made of thousands of individual bricks. Every single object in our universe is built from these fundamental, tiny particles. And once you really get that idea in your head, the world around you starts to make a whole lot more sense.
And now I want to leave you with one final thought, a question that might just bend your mind a little bit. If everything, you, the chair you're sitting on, the floor beneath you, the air around you, if it's all just made of these tiny moving particles with mostly empty space between them, then what are you actually feeling when you touch something? What does it truly mean to make contact? Are you ever really touching anything at all? Think about that for a while.